Good morning, CWF. Unfortunately, there's no live episode of Chain Wrestling this week. Sa is otherwise disposed, and I am fighting off another bout of the horrific coronavirus. But after this past week's wrestling bombshells, I thought, and I wanted to come on and show our respects to two of wrestling's fallen heroes. The wrestling world is such a giving place. The amount of entertainment and enjoyment we get from these guys and girls who put their bodies on the line day after day just to thrill and entertain us fans is absolutely amazing. But when the wrestling world takes away from the fans, it hurts quite a lot. It stings, and the wrestling world has taken away some big stars this week. Firstly, we got the bombshell that hardcore legend Terry Funk had passed away. This is a guy who's given 50 years plus, almost 60 years of his life to the world of professional wrestling. This is a guy who was around for decades before the Ruthless Aggression era, decades before the Attitude Era, decades before the Monday Night Wars. This is a guy who was around in the territory times, and this is a guy who, like I said, gave his everything to this business. Starting wrestling in the mid-60s in Amarillo, Texas. The guy travelled the world wrestling, Florida, Japan, the big three of the Attitude Era with the WCW, WWF / WWE, and the thing that could potentially be his biggest lasting legacy. This is a guy who, into his 30th year of wrestling, dragged a fledgling wrestling company in ECW up by the bootstraps and was pivotal in making them the third player in the Monday Night Wars, the inspiration for a lot of the Attitude Era that the WWF and WCW championed, the inspiration for a lot of the things that WWF and WCW did in that era of wrestling. It's hard to overstate just how important ECW was to that mindset of wrestling in the Attitude Era, and Terry Funk was front and centre of that. The guy was way past his prime at this point, but yet he was still better than 95% of the wrestling world. The guy, he garnered a reputation for being a hardcore legend, but he was almost like a wrestling chameleon. He was, in his younger career, very technical as a wrestler. I mean, this is a guy who went up and down the territories as a foil for the likes of Ric Flair. Went up and down Japan as a wrestler to face some of the biggest stars in Japanese wrestling. Guys like Stan Hansen, Bruiser Brody, Abdullah the Butcher. The guy has faced the likes of the Great Muta. It's a who's who of wrestling talent that this guy's not only faced but helped put over. There's very rarely been a wrestler who has given what Terry Funk has given to this business, and unfortunately, this past week, wrestling became a little bit darker when, at 79 years old, the guy passed away. Whether you watched his wrestling or not, whether you were a fan of his wrestling or not, his influence on the business is everywhere that you see wrestling, whether that's WWE, AEW, or even on the indies. This is a guy who lived and breathed wrestling, and it's a dark day for the wrestling world that we've lost Terry Funk. So thanks for everything, Terry. The wrestling world absolutely loves you and misses you. And if that wasn't enough for the wrestling world to take away from us, the day after, the 24th of August, we got hit with another low blow, another bombshell in the passing of Wyndham Rotunda, a.k.a. Bray Wyatt. Now, Bray and Terry's legacies are always going to be that they give everything they had to this business. The difference with the two is that Bray hadn't even reached his prime as a wrestler. The guy was 36 years old. He'd only had been wrestling since 2009, so compared to Terry, he was in his infancy of his wrestling career. And after coming through the WWE developmental scene with Florida Championship Wrestling, and then his time as part of the Nexus and NXT as Husky Harris, it took a while for him to find himself, I suppose, in the wrestling business. But one thing that was clear was this guy was different. He was one of the most creative wrestlers when it comes to storytelling and character development. His knowledge and the way he could take fans on a journey with his storytelling belied his actual age. This was a guy who was just so talented at weaving a narrative that in his short tenure as a wrestler, he created some characters and moments that will never, ever be forgot. When he re-debuted in the WWE as Bray Wyatt with the Wyatt family, it just blew everything else that was around WWE at that time out of the water. And this was pretty much all Bray Wyatt's doing. His knowledge of the wrestling business was just absolutely outstanding, and he and the Wyatt family became must-see wrestling television. And he quite rightly got to the absolute pinnacle of the company when he won the WWE Championship in 2017. His body of work in his relatively short wrestling career is up there with some of the best. The people who he worked with, the people who wanted to work with him, absolutely outstanding. The likes of Undertaker, Kane, Matt Hardy, Randy Orton. The guy elevated the likes of Luke Harper, Brody Lee, who rest in peace, Brody. The work he did in that infamous match at WrestleMania with John Cena, one of the very few cinematic matches that that stood out in that COVID pandemic period. Absolutely amazing. And then let's get on to the Firefly Funhouse and his character, The Fiend. Just this guy had a way of connecting his audience with something that was in everyone else's eyes surreal. The guy was playing a host of a children's program with horrific puppets that would never have gotten over with anybody else apart from Bray Wyatt at the helm. He was able to mock Vince McMahon openly in these Firefly Funhouse segments, and not only get away with it, but get praise for it. These were, again, they were must-watch TV. The Firefly Funhouse was essentially the only thing that a lot of wrestling fans were tuning into Raw and SmackDown for. And then the potential of Bray Wyatt / The Fiend wrestling had a lot of wrestling fans salivated at the thought of how this creative genius had come up with these two new characters and what was going to come of them. Unfortunately, WWE, as it tends to do, absolutely shit the bed with the characters, and it is what it is. But then after a break away from the company, he returned again, and the love that was shown when Bray Wyatt showed back up on SmackDown last October, and the anticipation for his return to the wrestling world, his return of potentially the Fiend character, new character, Uncle Howdy, and the hype going into his feud with LA Knight. It set the wrestling world back on fire again. And unfortunately, that all has been cut short due to illness, and then ultimately the untimely passing of who will go down in wrestling history as one of the all-time great storytellers. So again, it's really hard to get the words out to say about these two guys and what they've given to this wrestling business in their careers. Other than thank you, Bray, thank you, Wyndham. Your legacy will never be forgotten. And again, thank you, Terry. Thank you for everything that you've given to the business, and the wrestling world will be a darker place without you both. From the CWF, from everyone here at Chain Wrestling,